Hi, welcome back to Box of Delights. In this video I'm going to teach you how to play Mentis. Mentis is a two-player abstract strategy game. If you want to get a set of Mentis, then I'm afraid you're going to have to make one yourself because this game is not published. But all the rules and the components can be found on BoardGameGeek.com. There's a concise two-page rule set that will get you up and running. Each player, red and blue, starts the game with 10 pieces, 9 units and 1 king. The game's played out on a 7x7 grid. The setup for the game is quick. Each player places their king on the middle of these 3 squares that we call the hill on their side of the board, with players sitting opposite each other. The rest of the players' units begin the game in their hand. The aim of the game is to capture your opponent's king. Each game of Mentis begins with the blue player taking their turn first. On your turn you can do one of, and only one of, move, deploy or capture. Let's look at deploy first. When you deploy, you can deploy 1, 2 or 3 tiles from your hand. You can deploy these tiles to a single square on the board, and it has to be adjacent to your king's hill. So this is a successful deployment. As is this, as is this. You can deploy your tiles onto any empty square or any square that already contains your units, as long as you deploy and create a stack no more than 3 tiles high. During the game, no stack, no matter where it is on the board, may be more than 3 tiles high. However, you cannot deploy next to an opponent's tile. So in this instance you could not deploy here or here, but you could deploy here or here. If you deploy more than 1 tile in a stack, you must reveal to your opponent what those tiles were, but for the remainder of the game those tiles stay hidden. If you do not wish to deploy, the other option is to move. All tiles on the board move orthogonally, they cannot move diagonally. In addition, no tile can occupy or move over a tile occupied by an opponent's piece. No tile other than the king can move onto either hill. However, tiles of the same colour may move up over or occupy tiles of their same colour, so long as no square contains more than 3 tiles either during or at the end of the movement. So for example, this circle could move over this tile, but it could not move across this tile, because in doing so it would have formed a stack of 4 tiles during the movement. Each of the 4 different types of pieces moves in different ways. The cross, or the king, can move 1 square only, and only on the hill. So you can see that the king can only move back and forth across these 3 spaces. The triangle, sometimes called a spear, can only move 1 square, forwards, backwards or sideways. The square, sometimes called a trenchman, can only move 2 squares in a straight line in one direction, either forwards, backwards or sideways. They can never move just 1 square, they can only ever move 2 squares, no more, no less. And that means they cannot move forward 1 and then change direction. It must always be in a straight line. The circles, also known as nobles, can move 1, 2 or 3 squares, and in any direction except diagonally. It doesn't have to be in a straight line, so a noble can move 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, or even just 1, or just 2. So the circles are the most powerful when it comes to movement. The only restriction is that you cannot start and end your movement on the same square. There is one exception, and we'll come to that in a moment. We've already seen that during deployment, tiles can form stacks. When a tile moves, it can bring any tiles below it in the stack with it. So when a noble moves 3 spaces, it can carry the tiles below it with it. In addition, as it's moving, it can drop off pieces that are below it in the stack as it moves. In the same way, it can also pick up pieces as it moves. As long as during that movement there are never more than 3 pieces in a stack. Here's the same trick being performed by a square. And then on its next move, so you can see that movement is important to moving stacks of tiles around. The third choice you have on your turn, aside from deploying and moving, is capturing. Unlike in chess, you do not move onto a piece to capture it. In fact, the rules of movement prohibit you from moving onto a square occupied by an enemy tile. Capturing is an action distinct from movement. When you attack, you capture an enemy tile on a different square. Each of the 4 types of tiles has a different range of attack. The circles, the nobles here, have a range of attack of 1. They can only capture an enemy piece which is 1 tile away. So this circle here can declare that he will capture this square. This circle here will declare he will capture this circle. This circle here can attack this triangle here, except each type of piece cannot be captured by one other type of piece. Triangles cannot be captured by circles. Circles cannot be captured by squares, and squares cannot be captured by triangles. The small white shape here indicates which type of tile these pieces are immune to captures by. As with movement, you can only capture pieces which are orthogonally adjacent, not diagonally. This circle could not capture this circle. Squares, or trenchmen, have a range of attack of 2 squares. So this square could capture this triangle. However, it could not capture this triangle if it was only 1 square away. The range of attack says the exact number of squares the opposing piece must be away from you to capture it. We can see that circles cannot be captured by squares. But this square can capture this triangle, and this square can capture this square. Triangles, or spearmen as they're also known, have an attack range of 3. They can only capture pieces which are 3 squares away. Squares cannot be captured by triangles. So this triangle could capture this circle. In addition, captures are not blocked by interposing pieces. This spearman's attack goes over the top of this trenchman to capture this noble. The same is true even if there's an enemy piece in the way. This spearman with a range of 3 can still capture this noble, despite there being an enemy spearman in the way. However, this trenchman, this square, which cannot be captured by triangles, will block any attacks by triangles. So this spearman in this instance, although he has a range 3 on this noble, has his attack blocked by this trenchman. Likewise, this trenchman could capture this spearman with its range of 2, even if one of his other pieces was in the way. However, if the enemy noble was in the way, which is immune to and blocks attacks from trenchmen, then this trenchman could not capture this spear. Finally, the king, like nobles, which are circles, the king has an attack range of just 1 square. But no pieces are immune to attacks from kings. The king can capture any piece, but once more only orthogonally, not diagonally. So to capture this spearman, the king needs to move on 1 turn and then capture on the next turn. Likewise, the king himself is not immune to any attacks from any of the opposing pieces. If the king were here, he could be captured by this noble. If this trenchman were here with his range of 2, he could capture this king. Likewise, if the spearman were here with its range of 3, it could capture the king. This is your objective, to get your units in a position where they can capture the opposing king. For the second part of this video, I'm going to give you an example game move by move, and we'll comment on some of the moves as we play. Blue starts by making a deployment of spear, spear, noble. Red replies with trenchman, noble, noble. Blue then moves, and with his noble he can move 3 spaces. And with the third movement we're going to drop a spear attacking the red king. Remember the spear's range of 3, 1, 2, 3. Red replies, dropping the trenchman to block the spear attack on the red king. Blue moves. Remember the nobles can move 1, 2 or 3 spaces. This noble is now threatening to take this trenchman, which will once again leave the king under attack. And with the spear left here, also attacking this square. Red's response is quite intriguing. Trenchman, spear, and noble. The threat here from red is that on next turn they can have a trio of nobles here on c4, which could rampage towards the enemy king and cause a lot of trouble. And at the same time, the threat from the trenchman attacking the blue spears here on d4. The question for blue is what they should do about it. Let's see what happens when blue says e5 takes d5. So on blue's turn they're going to capture this trenchman. Red plays d6, drop to d5, drop to c5 to c4, as we suspected. The immediate advance to c4 is important for red. It stops blue blocking her advance by placing a tile on c4 himself. Blue responds with a deployment, just 1 tile, a spearman, to c2. Blue must deploy a spear to defend against a trio of nobles. A trio of nobles is dangerous because once coming here, the king can only flee. If he tries to capture, he only takes the top one from the stack, and then this noble will capture the blue king and it will be game over. So the only option is to run away. If we run away, then once more the blue king is caught in a trap. If he captures, red will take back. If he tries to run away, then he's immediately captured. So this is a very dangerous move. Blue's deployment of the spearman there on c2 means that should red run in, the blue king has a safe square, protected by his spearmen who are immune to attacks. The other option, which is the spearman to d2, would save the king without having to run away. But the problem with spearman to d2 is that red's spearman here on d5 will simply capture next turn. Remember, their ranged attack isn't blocked by interposing pieces unless it's a trenchman. So the only choice is the spearman to c2. There's the option of e2 as well. Red leaves a noble behind and plays c4, c3 to d3 to d2, attacking the blue king. Red left this noble behind to retain control of this square. The two nobles on d2 are enough to complete the threat. If blue had not played the spears, then the full trio of nobles would have advanced and finished off the blue king. But now blue must flee the king and try and build a defence behind the c2 spears. Red seems to have stolen the initiative and continues with spears, trenchman, spears to c6. Red is trying to threaten the c2 spears. Red could have instead captured the d4 spears at this point, but that only loses tempo on her mounting attack. Blue now gets some more defence deployed. Trenchman, trenchman, noble to b1. This square can't be deployed to because it's not adjacent to the hill. This square can't be deployed to because it's adjacent to an enemy piece now. Red's spearman, trenchman, spearman to c6 was good. Blue's a bit stuck. The red threat's looking way too strong. And we'll see this now with c6 to c5. Blue, feeling helpless, pretty much resigns with this move on turn 8. c2 takes c5. Red's about to finish things off with c5 to c4 to c3. Can you see why it's game over? Let me explain. It's Blue's turn and they're under threat from the spears on c4, but Red has put the trenchman here, and that is also, with its range of 2, attacking the king. The only thing Blue can do is put a trenchman in the way with something like this. Remember, this was spear, trenchman, trenchman. And now this spear is blocked. And the only thing that can block a trenchman is a noble. If we put the noble to block the trenchman's attack, then the spearman's attack can go through. It's only the topmost piece that is active. There's nothing more that Blue can do, and Red will capture the